I never thought my dedication to my students would nearly cost me my life. I'm a 25-year-old elementary school teacher in Colorado, and looking back, I realize how naive I was to ignore all the warning signs. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It was late February when everything happened. My second graders had been begging me for weeks to judge their science fair projects, their excited faces when I promised to be there Monday morning. That's why I took the risk of driving back during a storm. I had driven up to Silver Peak Resort for a weekend ski trip, my first time back on the slopes in years. The forecast mentioned possible snow, but nothing I hadn't handled before growing up in these mountains. I distinctly remember checking my SUV before leaving. Full tank of gas, emergency kit in the back, winter tires. I'd even rented a snowmobile that weekend for the first time in years, surprising myself at how quickly the handling came back to me. That muscle memory would save my life just hours later. The blizzard hit harder than expected about an hour into my drive home. The wind howled around my SUV, ice particles hitting the windshield like tiny bullets. The snow was coming down so thick I could barely see past my hood, but I kept pushing forward, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. That's when I noticed something odd about my fuel gauge. I had filled up the day before near the resort, but the needle was dropping way too fast. 20 minutes later, my engine sputtered and died near the peak of Mason's Pass. I coasted to the shoulder, my heart pounding. The moment I stepped out, the bitter cold cut through my winter coat. Over the howling wind, I caught the sharp smell of gasoline. My fears were confirmed when I checked under the car with my phone's flashlight. I saw it, a clean cut in my fuel line, dripping the last drops of precious gas onto the snow. This wasn't an accident. Someone had done this deliberately. The only building nearby was an old gas station, its windows dark except for a single light in the back. My phone showed no signal, typical for these mountains during storms. The wind carried ice crystals that stung my face as I stood there, weighing my options. That's when I heard the rumble of an approaching snowplow. For a moment, relief flooded through me. The driver pulled up beside me, rolled down his window, and introduced himself as Alec. He seemed friendly enough, maybe mid-40s, wearing a worn baseball cap and a thick winter jacket. But something in his eyes made my skin crawl when he offered me a ride to Mountain Shadow Lodge, saying it was the only place open for miles. "Can't leave you out here to freeze," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Lots of folks get caught up here in bad weather. Lodge isn't fancy, but it's warm." The way he said, "lots of folks," made my stomach turn. I hesitated, the wind whipping snow around us. Every survival instinct screamed at me to decline, but with the temperature dropping below zero and the storm intensifying, what choice did I have? I climbed into the cab, clutching my phone and keeping my dad's old Swiss Army knife close in my pocket. The leather handle, worn smooth from years of use, offered little comfort. During the drive, Alec kept asking questions that seemed innocent enough, but looking back, they were too specific. He knew I was a teacher without me mentioning it. He asked about my students and my weekend at Silver Peak, all details I hadn't shared. Each question made the knot in my stomach tighter. The lodge appeared through the snow, this massive, dark shape that seemed to loom over us as we approached. 3 other vehicles were parked outside, all dark-colored SUVs arranged in a neat row, like they were waiting for something, or someone. Inside, there were 4 men sitting around a fireplace. They barely looked up when we walked in, but I felt their eyes on me, the way they were positioned. I realized now they had spread out to block any easy exit. Their movements seemed practiced, coordinated, like wolves circling prey. One would drift toward the kitchen, while another casually blocked the front door. "Service is out," Alex said, taking my coat before I could object. Storm, you know. The warmth from the fireplace couldn't stop the chill running down my spine. I tried my phone anyway, moving around the room, pretending to look for a signal. The floorboards creaked under my feet, each sound echoing in the too-quiet room. That's when I noticed how they moved with me, always keeping me surrounded. One of them, a bigger guy with a beard, kept fingering something in his jacket pocket. The others watched me with barely concealed anticipation. It was maybe 20 minutes later when I heard it. They thought I was distracted trying to get a signal, but I caught part of their whispered conversation. "Waiting too long? Do it now, before..." My blood turned to ice. I knew if I didn't get out immediately, I never would. I'd been watching the garage door since we arrived, an old habit from teaching kids about emergency exits. When the men started arguing about timing in hushed voices, the scraping of their chairs against the wooden floor made me flinch. I knew my window was closing fast. The garage was connected to the main room, just a few steps away. My hands were sweating despite the cold, and my heart was thundering so loud I was sure they could hear it. But teachers are good at keeping a calm face. Years of handling classroom chaos taught me that. I forced myself to breathe slowly, steadily, like I was dealing with a student meltdown instead of fighting for my life. One of the men got up and moved toward a firewood pile in the corner, his boots heavy on the floor. The others turned to watch him. That's when I moved. 3 quick steps to the garage door. The handle turned silently. Thank God. I slipped inside, easing the door shut behind me with trembling fingers. The garage was dark and freezing, the air sharp with the smell of oil and gasoline. But there it was, a snowmobile, partially covered by a tarp. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull the tarp off. The fabric rustled too loudly in the quiet space. All I could think about was the sound it would make starting up, how the men would come running. Then I heard heavy footsteps crossing the main room. The floorboards creaked, getting closer. Someone had noticed I was gone. You know how people say time slows down in moments of panic? They're wrong. Everything speeds up. I lunged for the snowmobile, yanking the pull cord like I'd done just hours ago at the resort. The engine caught on the first try. I've never been so grateful for anything in my life. The side door burst open behind me just as I hit the garage door opener. Light flooded in from the main room. I caught a glimpse of shocked faces, heard someone shout, "Get her!" Zrinya, and then I was out in the storm. The cold hit me like a physical blow. I didn't have my coat, just my sweater. The wind cut through the fabric like knives. But stopping meant dying. I could hear engines roaring to life behind me. They were coming. My only chance was to lose them in the trees where their trucks couldn't follow. The snowmobile's headlight carved through the darkness as I weaved between pines, branches whipping past my face, ice crystals stinging my eyes. The men must have known these woods. Their headlights kept appearing between the trees, cutting through the swirling snow like searchlights. I was running purely on adrenaline and muscle memory from that morning's ride. The cold was biting through my sweater, turning my fingers numb on the controls. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. I had no idea where I was going. The snow was so thick, I could barely see 3 feet ahead, and the wind kept changing direction, disorienting me. Ice-covered branches whipped past my face, leaving stinging cuts. But I knew one thing. I had to keep moving east. The resort I'd left that morning was east. I clung to that thought like a lifeline. Then I hit a clearing, and my heart nearly stopped. Headlights were approaching from 3 directions, their beams cutting through the blinding snow. They'd been hurting me. The realization hit me harder than the cold. I'd played right into their trap. In that moment, all I could think about was how they'd find my body in the spring thaw. How my students would wonder why I never showed up for their science fair. Little Tommy's volcano project. Sarah's plant experiment. Faces I might never see again. I gunned it straight for the gap between 2 sets of lights. It was maybe 30 feet of space, but in that blizzard, it felt like threading a needle. I heard engines revving, saw the lights converging fast. Too fast. The roar of their engines filled my ears, getting closer and closer. At the last second, I cut hard right and dove back into the trees. There was a crash behind me. They hadn't expected the move and couldn't turn in time. The sound of crunching metal and shouting faded into the howling wind. I didn't look back. I don't know how long I rode. My whole body was numb, and I was starting to see things in the snow. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. But suddenly there were lights ahead. Not headlights, but windows. Lots of them. The resort. I barely remember pulling up to the main lodge. Remember screaming about men chasing me, my voice hoarse and cracking. Remember the staff rushing out, their faces blurring as I collapsed into their arms, my limbs too frozen to hold me up. Remember them calling the police as they wrapped me in blankets, tried to warm my blue fingers. The state police found the lodge empty. The men were gone. They found evidence, though. Empty gas containers, rope in the garage, a single glove with blood on it. But the men themselves never caught them. That was 3 years ago. I still teach, but I don't drive mountain roads alone anymore. I check my car every morning, and I keep taking different routes to work. The cuts on my face healed, but other scars remain. Some days, I still catch myself checking my fuel gauge obsessively, looking over my shoulder in parking lots. Every time a snowplow passes, my heart stops for a moment. I teach my students about internet safety now, about trusting their instincts. But I can't tell them the whole story. Can't explain why their teacher insists they always have a backup plan and make sure someone knows exactly where they are. Sometimes, when it snows, I swear I see familiar headlights in my rearview mirror, getting closer. Somewhere out there, they're still hunting. And I know I'm not the only one who's escaped. It's my first job at a chain restaurant on the edge of town. I had just turned 18 and was still figuring out how to balance my shifts with drama club rehearsals. After school, I'd rush to practice, then straight to work, closing up late at night before finally heading home. Exhaustion was my constant companion, but I needed the job. I had saved and scraped to buy my car, a beat-up jalopy that rattled like a box of loose screws every time I hit a bump. The fuel gauge was broken, permanently stuck on full. I knew it wasn't working, but taking it to a mechanic meant spending money I didn't have. Every penny I made was going toward out-of-state college tuition. Instead, I just guessed, topping off the tank whenever I remembered. That's a disaster waiting to happen, my best friend warned. She wasn't wrong. When I got to work that night, my phone was already dead from practicing songs during drama club. I plugged it in to charge. After closing, I grabbed it before heading home. It was supposed to be a simple drive home. But a few miles down a deserted stretch of road, the engine gave a violent shudder, a sputter, then silence. I coasted to the side of the road, gripping the wheel as my heart pounded in my ears. I knew before even looking, I'd run out of gas. The road stretched into the darkness, swallowed by dense woods on either side. No streetlights, no gas stations for miles. The only sound was the distant chirping of crickets, underscored by my own panicked breathing. I fumbled for my phone, tapped the screen. Nothing. Dead. I realized someone must have unplugged it, and I left my charger behind. Just great. I sat there for a while, debating my next move. I could start walking, but the idea of trekking alone down a pitch-black road made my stomach turn. And what if someone came by while I was gone? The thought of leaving my car vulnerable didn't sit right with me. Then, finally, headlights. Relief surged through me as a car approached. It was sleek, low to the ground, its LED lights cutting through the darkness. A sports car. When it slowed and pulled up beside me, I exhaled. 2 college-age women were inside, their laughter spilling out as the driver's window rolled down. "Hey, you okay?" the driver called out. I nodded quickly, stepping toward them. "Yeah, but I ran out of gas." They giggled, the scent of alcohol and perfume wafting out. The driver tilted her head, her eyes glassy. "Want a ride to the gas station?" "Yes, please." They waved me over, then pulled up in front of my car. I grabbed my phone, climbed out, and silently thanked my lucky stars. Without a second thought, I dashed toward the sports car. For a moment, I wondered, how will I get gas? I don't even have a gas can, and how will I get back? I pushed the thought aside. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But just as I reached for the handle, the engine revved, and the car jerked forward. Laughter erupted. I frowned, taking another step. The car inched forward again. More laughter. That's when I knew. They weren't going to help me. They were playing a game. I stopped in my tracks, my stomach twisting with anger. The driver grinned, throwing up a mocking wave. Then just like that, they sped off into the night. I stood there, jaw clenched, watching their taillights disappear. Jerks. Defeated, I trudged back to my car, humiliated and furious. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then, another vehicle. This one was different. A pickup truck. An old F-150, rust creeping along the doors, its headlights duller, yellowed with time. The truck rumbled to a stop a few feet away. The driver's door creaked open. A man stepped out. Tall, slow moving. He didn't call out right away, just lingered in the open door for a moment before starting toward me. His boots crunched against the gravel, deliberate measured steps. I didn't move. Something about him, maybe the stillness in his approach or the way he took his time, made my gut tighten. This time, I stayed in the car. He stopped beside my window. The dim glow from my dashboard barely reached his face, but what I could see made my skin prickle. Deep lines carved into his features, his eyes shadowed and unreadable. I cracked the window just an inch. "Hey, thanks for stopping. I ran out of gas and my phone's dead." The man nodded slowly. A thin smile flickered across his face. "No problem," he said, his voice rough and low. "I can give you a ride to the gas station." I hesitated. Something felt off. How do you tell someone offering help in your most obvious moment of need, "Thanks, but no thanks"? I thought of the girls from earlier, the way they played with me instead of helping. The memory stiffened my resolve. "That's okay," I said lightly. "I think I'll wait. Someone else will come by." The smile lingered, but his eyes darkened. "Not many cars on this road at night," he said, shifting his weight. "You'll be waiting a long time." I shrugged. "I called my boyfriend. He's on his way." His hand lifted, resting on the roof of my car. Not knocking, not tapping, just there. "You sure? Moments ago, you said your phone was dead." "Shit." I swallowed hard and nodded. A beat passed, then another. His fingers trailed down to the door handle. Instinct kicked in. I slammed the lock button just as he tugged. The soft thunk of the locks engaging changed everything. His jaw tightened. The mask slipped. His fist came down, hard, against the window. "Open the door," he said, voice low, controlled. "I'm trying to help you." I didn't move. My hands were slick with sweat, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. He exhaled through his nose, slow and heavy, then started pacing, circling my car like a predator sizing up its prey. His fingers tapped against the glass. I shrank down, pulse racing. "Please don't break the glass. Please don't break the glass." If he got his hands on me, I knew I wouldn't survive. Then, headlights. A second car, still distant, but approaching fast. The man froze. He glanced back at me, something unreadable flickering across his face. The lights got closer. Then I had a brilliant idea. I slammed my palm onto my car horn, the sound splitting through the night like a gunshot. Have you ever been on the highway and suddenly heard a loud horn behind you, then looked in your rearview mirror to see an 18-wheeler tailgating you? That was the effect. The man jerked, eyes widening. Then, just as quickly, he turned and strode back to his truck. A second later, the engine roared to life. The F-150 peeled off into the night, tires screeching, swallowed by the darkness. I sat there, shaking, watching the approaching car like a lifeline. It slowed beside me. I had one hand still on my horn, the other pounding against my window. A middle-aged man leaned out, his wife in the passenger seat. "You okay?" he asked. I swallowed hard, shaking my head. My voice failed me. Even though they seemed nice, I was reluctant to roll my window down all the way or step out of my car. The wife must have seen the terror in my eyes. She pulled out her phone and called 911, her voice calm and steady. "Everything's going to be all right," she kept saying. They stayed with me until I saw the flashing red and blue lights in the distance. I stepped out of my car and my knees nearly buckled. I told the officers everything. The girls who had played their cruel game, the man who had tried to force his way in. The couple backed me up. They'd seen the truck speeding away as they pulled up. The next day, I skipped school and took my car straight to the mechanic. If that man had gotten hold of me, I doubt I'd be around to go to college. And those two girls? The ones who thought it was funny to toy with someone stranded and vulnerable. I hoped karma found them. I hoped they got paid in the same currency they dealt me, unless they changed their ways. I haven't run out of gas since that night. I always make sure my tank is full before I go anywhere, and I keep my doors locked, even in broad daylight. The end. Thank you very much for watching. Would you have trusted him or waited alone in the dark, hoping for someone else to stop? Let me know in the comments, as well as where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story has traveled. And if you love suspenseful storytelling, hit that like button and share this video with someone who enjoys a good mystery. You never know, it might just keep them out of danger one day. For more spine-chilling short stories, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the scariest stories are the ones that could happen to you. Stay safe out there. This is your host, signing off for now.
She called 911, but no one came. A rookie cop found her body in a motel. No witnesses, no backup, just blood and a phone still recording. The voice on that phone, it said, "Don't let him take me." I was supposed to protect her, but someone higher up wanted her gone. They shut me down. My partner got shot, and the guy calling the shots, he wore a badge too. That's when I learned justice doesn't wait for permission. Some cases stay with you. This one never left. Don't let him take me.